This is the Simpit. I'm your host, Sean Cole, but the real star of today's show is the PXN V9 steering wheel. This truly is an entry-level steering wheel or racing system, and it is intended to take casual console gamers who are using a controller and maybe upgrade them or convert them into a steering wheel so they can actually be sim racing. The PXN V9 steering wheel system goes for $179 and comes with a wheelbase and a wheel, a 3-pedal pedal set, as well as an H-pattern shifter. The PXN V9 wheel is also cross-compatible and will work on your PlayStation, your Xbox, your PC, your Switch, basically anything that accepts a USB input device. So you may be asking, how do they give you all of that? The wheel, the pedals, and the shifter for that low price of $179? The answer is no force feedback. And to be fair, if you are a seasoned sim racer and you already have your equipment all dialed in, probably a better kit than this, you can tune out right now because this is not intended for you at all. Now, if you're one of those out there who dabbles in racing games from time to time and you find yourself using a controller, well, let me tell you, this is not racing. This is racing. So the PXN V9 wheel is an entry-level steering wheel set, which is an area or a part of the market that I think a lot of reviewers have kind of left behind. We've gotten so overwhelmed with the amount of high-end gear that we forget about that starting point. The guys sitting on their couch playing Gran Turismo or Forza with a controller and wondering, hey, do I really want to step up? Do I really want to take this a little bit more seriously? And from my perspective of things, how do I get a sim racer to step up when I'm telling them the starting price for sim racing for their equipment is going to be $3, $4, $5, $7, $1,000 is a very steep price to convert somebody from using that controller and getting them into really driving a car with the proper controls. And the other reality is because many of the games that we're talking about, your Gran Turismo, your Forza, your Farm Sim, your Grid, they can actually be played with a controller. So getting them to understand how much better it is, how much more like a real car it is when you're using a wheel and pedal set is hard to understand, and those prices could be a big distraction or stopping point for them. But nonetheless, using a steering wheel can reward a more serious driver, and being able to do it on the budget, enter the picture the PXN V9 steering wheel at $179. The PXN V9 steering wheel is a non-force feedback steering wheel that I do believe either uses spring tension or bungee cord technology, if you want to call it that, for that center spring or that return tension that you're resisting while steering. The V9 wheel comes with 2 different modes with your choice of 270 or 900 degrees of rotation. In lieu of force feedback, the wheelbase has dual shaker motors that will provide vibration of game sensations like road noise, engine RPM, and other game parameters. The wheelbase is what you'd expect at this price point. It is made of a plastic shell with a slight curve across the top that resembles a car gauge's hump. And on the bottom are suction cups, which downright scare me as far as using them even in a non-force feedback wheel scenario, but it does also come with clamps for your desk or a more secure mounting. On the back side of the base is a little bit of a car grill type look or shape to it, as well as this is where you will find the USB cable and the plug-in points for the pedals, the shifter, and the controller. The front side of the base, or the side that faces the driver, really only has the switch that will change the rotation of the wheel from 2 fixed positions of 270 or 900 degrees. The steering wheel is permanently attached to the base, and there's a plastic ring that covers up any visible shaft. The steering wheel rim measures in at 11 inches or 280 millimeters wide with a flat bottom to make a D shape. To finish off the rim is a multi-textured with rubberized sections where the hands go that has a leather perforation texture to it. The top and bottom portions of the rim are slick, hard plastic, and at the very top, a thin center stripe. The wheel rim has an ergonomic shape and is not perfectly round, but measures in somewhere between 1 1/8 inches or 29 millimeters up to about 1.5 inches or 38 millimeters thick depending on where you measure. The center portion of the rim, or the tri-spoke area, is more of a silver colored plastic, and on the left and right hand spokes you can see the all too familiar controller setup of the D-pad on the left, and on the right the 4-button pattern of triangle, circle, cross, and square that are also marked with Y, B, A, and X. These buttons have the same look and feel as a typical controller. On the lower left-hand side of the tri-spoke are 3 buttons marked L1, L2, and L3, and on the right-hand side, 3 more marked R1, R2, and R3. On the lower tri-spoke are 4 more buttons marked Program, Mode, Share, and Options. Above those buttons is a connection light, and at the center, a steering wheel style center badge with the PXN logo. Just behind the wheel are 2 plastic shifter paddles that measure in about 4.5 inches or 114 millimeters long, and the overall measurements of the entire wheelbase are about 11 inches or 280 millimeters wide by 11.25 inches or 286 millimeters tall by about 13.5 inches or 343 millimeters front to back. The PXN V9 steering wheel, as I mentioned, does come with a 3-pedal set, which is pretty cool at this price point. That means you get a gas, a brake, and a clutch. And the entire base itself is made of black plastic and a triangular shape that gives the heel plate a bit of angle. Behind each pedal on the base are 3 little rubber pads that are the bump stops to limit the travel of each pedal. On the bottom side are 5 rubber pads to grip the flooring surface. Hinged into the bottom is an extension plate that will sit flat on the floor but give your heels something to sit on. This plate is also made of plastic and has a bumpy texture to it. When looking at the pedal arms, each one is made entirely of plastic, with the top of each arm having a silver plastic face and texture bumps poking through, making them look like real pedals. The gas pedal has a curved face and measures about 4 5/8 inches or 117 millimeters long and roughly 2.25 inches or 57 millimeters wide. The gas pedal actually has a surprising amount of travel, over 3 inches in fact, and has very light spring tension or resistance against its movement. The brake and clutch are both set back from the gas slightly and have about 2 inches of travel, with each of those pedal faces being 3 7/8 inches or 98 millimeters tall by 2.5 inches or 64 millimeters wide. The overall measurements of the pedals with the footrest extended is about 13.25 or 337 millimeters wide by 15.75 inches or 400 millimeters front to back, and about 5.5 inches or 140 millimeters tall. The shifter that is included with the PXN V9 steering wheel is very basic. It is also made of plastic, and you can see it kind of resembles a Logitech G-Series shifter. In fact, it even feels like one. It is a small shifter in every respect. The shifter arm itself with that plastic knob extends about 3.25 inches or 83 millimeters above its base. But it is also the overall shape of the shifter that is only 4 3/4 inches or 120 millimeters wide by 7.5 inches or 190 millimeters front to back by about 4 3/4 inches or 120 millimeters tall above the mounting surface. The shifter has a rubber boot and a ring around it that makes it look like a shifter, as well as a silver-topped handle with a pattern engraved into it, and then 2 up and down or monetary switches as an added bonus. On the bottom side of the shifter is the clamping mechanism that extends down another 4 3/4 inches or 121 millimeters when open to its absolute maximum. When it comes down to mounting the PXN V9 wheel, we really do have to think about its intended user or client, and that being a very beginning level sim racer or new gamer turning into sim racer, I should say. This is someone probably sitting in their living room playing on a console, therefore they do have that suction cup method. I guess you could just slap it on your living room table and hope it sticks. I never depend on that. So luckily it does have those clamps. They do open fairly wide, and I was able to get a really good grip with both the steering wheel and the shifter. I just put them right on a TV tray, and then I slid the pedals between the legs of the TV tray, which would be the way most typical users would probably use this wheel, and put that right in front of my television playing some Gran Turismo. When opened all the way, the wheel clamps on the wheelbase open up to accommodate a deck or platform of 3 inches or 76 millimeters thick. When it comes down to driving the PXN V9 steering wheel, it does get things done in the most minimalistic of ways possible. Starting off with Gran Turismo, it does completely change the game when compared to using a controller. I can now use much more natural movement to control the car's direction, speed, and even balance. I can ease the car into the corner versus that typical over-understeer lack of dexterity that I have with the controller. And again, this isn't driving, this is driving. It was the steering that was the biggest upgrade from a control pad that I noticed. This led to shaving time off my laps consistently from game to game. I was always faster with this setup than I was with the controller, period. End of story right there when comparing. On the downside of things, the wheel was very flexy. If I put any pressure in any direction other than spinning the wheel, it would flex in just about every other direction. This is obviously a low-end wheel when compared to nicer gear. The wheel also had a wiggle to it. This is when I just pivot in a direction other than the spinning direction without much pressure. You can just wiggle and jiggle the wheel on its mouth. I found the shape and grips on the wheel to be adequate for a wheel rim of this price point. Yes, they are just kind of rubbery, but feel good in my hands. All of the buttons of the rim are pushed towards center, so none of them are really at your fingertips, but it has plenty of buttons in-game to take care of your sim racing needs. The paddle shifters are large enough to use from just about any turned angle and have a decent enough click that is felt and heard to confirm the shift. However, the pedals are kind of flappy with low tension and are very, very flexy if pulled beyond their intended throw distance. Focusing more on the shifter, I once again declare, this is the bare bones minimum for those looking to use an H-pattern shifter. Yes, it gets the job done. You can physically move the shifter into all the gates and achieve the goal, but there is no feeling whatsoever to any car that I've ever driven in real life. I feel like the shifter is a great add-on to the package, but it once again points out the toyish nature of the hardware that we are using. The pedals are an area that I really could complain about if I started comparing them to higher-end gear. Again, I hate to keep using words like minimalistic, so let's go with basic or generic. There is once again the added bonus of the third pedal or clutch to go along with that H-pattern shifter, so when comparing them to other inexpensive wheels, this is a serious bonus. However, the pedals are very softly sprung, have relatively low amount of throw or travel distance other than the gas pedal, and have no distinguishing features that make them feel like a real car. And when comparing these pedals to using a controller, there is no comparison. With the pedals, I can finesse the car. I can rear wheel steer the car with the throttle pedal coming off corners. My bond between the controller and the car's actions are now matched. No more chasing the over and under movements of my controller. Things have become much more precise. Now, despite the softly sprung pedals, I did find that the pedals still slid on my clean wood floors, and they also moved on my carpet. The flip over heel plate definitely helps and is better for driving, but it is best to secure the pedals to get the best results out of them. Something else that I haven't talked much about is the rumble motors and the lack of force feedback. There was a time not that long ago when sim racers would have opted for a non-force feedback wheel over the early force feedback models, but here we are in 2022 where the game's outputs have become so much better, and even the most basic force feedback wheel is giving you a signal that can be used as an advantage to make you a better driver. So in 2022, you might want to step up to even the most basic force feedback steering wheel over this one if you're just getting started in sim racing. I will say the rumble motors added to the experience, and between the bungee cord tension and the rumble motors, it would allow my brain to fill in the missing force feedback slightly, in a faux force feedback kind of way. I did also do some driving on my PC. I tested the wheel on iRacing, which did require some work. For starters, you need to use the app to properly change the mode of the wheel and then to remap the controls to match the PC or the game. That was a pain in the butt, and proper PC drivers could eliminate that issue in the future. After quite some time mapping the wheel in the app and then mapping in-game, I did get the wheel fully functioning, including the shifter. For the most part, the driving experience was identical to how I described it before on the console. Flexy, wiggly, no force feedback, and lifeless controls, but at the same time, I was actually driving a car properly and putting in relatively competitive lap times. There was a noticeable precision or resolution difference to higher end gear, with the wheel turning in about 5-degree increments, but the pedals were accurate and the overall experience was so much better than trying to drive iRacing with a controller, which is absolutely impossible for me. Well, that tells you just about everything you need to know about the PXN V9 steering wheel, but I always like to make it perfectly clear, break it down with the good, the not so good, and the bottom line, starting off with the good, and that being, it is better than using a hand controller. Comes with 3-pedal set. Comes with H-pattern shifter. Adjustable rotation, 270 or 900. Desk clamp mount, easy. Portable, just throw it in the closet. Plenty of mappable controls or buttons, even for the PC. Long pedal throw on the gas pedal. Wheel clamps held on well. And now on to the not so good. First thing being, no force feedback. Must use phone app on PC. Mapping buttons for PC is a pain. Low resolution. Not built to last. A bit of wiggle. Flexy. All 3 pedals felt the same. And now on to the bottom line, starting with the transitioning from being a gamer to a sim racer. Now, I know for a lot of people, maybe they've been using controllers so long that they can actually steer into a corner and apply the throttle gently to get best results out of the car. For me and a lot of people, I think that's actually really impossible. I am all over the place with the controller. I'm completely dependent on the driving aids in the game to make it a drivable model, and the proof is in the pudding when I try iRacing with the controller, which is nearly impossible. So for me, stepping up to a steering wheel, pedals, and even a shifter is really the transition point from being a gamer to a sim racer, regardless of what type of game that you're playing. Now, with that said, getting back to the phone app and having to download the phone app in order to make this even work on the PC, that is just steps that I don't want beginners to have to go through. On the PC, a steering wheel should be plug and play, plug it in, and it should be able to just be mapped within game. That's not a lot to ask of a company in 2022. So again, getting back to that transition driver, somebody looking to step up. And again, I did mention it at some point during the driving, force feedback has gotten so good. And I know for a lot of people, even $179 might be a big leap of faith when considering, am I a sim gamer? Am I a racing gamer? Or am I a sim racer? And someday I'm going to step up to bigger sims and take up the competition side of sim racing even more seriously. You really got to think, is this the wheel to start with, or do you even just step up to the most affordable of the force feedback steering wheels? I think right now for me, that is the toughest part, but I do understand being on a very, very tight budget, and I think even without force feedback, it'll show you the advantages of using a proper racing setup while doing driving games, even if you're doing it on the game level. I also feel for those who are looking to play more like farm sim, where force feedback might not be so important, having all of the precision might not be so important. It's about having mappable controls and being able to steer your tractor or your farm equipment around the map. This is going to be a really good option for that, because I think at that price point, it gets you off the controller, gets you feeling like you're really driving the machinery and really experiencing the game. So with all that said, like I did say in the review a few different times, this does get the job done in a minimalistic way. If you have a higher budget, I would probably recommend stepping up, like I said as well. But if you are just on a super tight budget, you just want to start racing for real, this is going to be a decent option. I just wonder how long it's going to last, and I feel like anybody who gets this wheel and loves sim racing, this is going to be a transition wheel. Not a transition just from the controller to this wheel, but it'll be a secondary transition from this setup to a more robust, more force feedback based sim racing setup. So I think that tells you everything that you need to know about the PXN V9 steering wheel, and of course you can check out We have a link to their Amazon. That's where they're sold through here in the United States. You can get all the more information you need there. Be sure to thumbs up the show if you like what we did. Be sure to subscribe so you can find out when our next video comes out. And most of all, thanks for watching. This is the Simpit. I'm Sean Cole, and I'll see you on the track.